And Caroline.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get going right away, but we're going to deal with an administrative matter first. Given that this is the first SDAB hearing of this calendar year, according to our SDAB bylaw, we need to have an election of chair and vice chair. So I'd call upon our clerk to lead that portion of the process.
Thank you. So in the absence of an elected chair and vice chair and as secretary of the board, I'm going to ask that the board nominates a chair for the term.
I would nominate Sean, if that's okay, as the chair.
Okay, Sean Krauser has been nominated for chair. Do you accept this nomination?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Perfect, all in favor?
Or nomination.
Excellent, and so next on our agenda, I would like to ask the board members to nominate a vice chair.
And I'll nominate Greg Birch.
Greg Birch, do you accept?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. I will ask to make a motion, or sorry, I'd ask for a seconder. Okay, all in favor? Excellent, thank you.
Great, thank you for that. So I call this meeting of the Subdivision Development Appeal Board to order. My name is Sean Krauser. I'll be the chair for this hearing. All questions and comments shall be directed through me. The board members will now introduce themselves, starting at my far left.
Harry Scott.
Put on your mic, please, so it's on the record.
Harry Scott.
Greg Birch.
Jill Jameson.
Vi Sanford, Town Councillor.
Adam Draytick.
Great, thank you. And the clerk for this hearing is Jolene Noel. Now I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda, which just has the single matter on it. Are there any changes, Madam Clerk?
There are none.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated. Do I have a second to that motion? Mr. Birch?
I'd second.
All in favor? Carried. Right. Now, before introducing the appeal by the development officer, I would now ask each member of the town administration present to introduce themselves, please.
My name is Lisa DeSoto. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer.
Robin Denodge, I'm the Communications Manager.
Great, thank you. Great, thank you. And the appeal number before us today is, I have it right here, is SB 2018-229. Is that correct? Oh, DP.
Yeah, it's DP,
There we
not
go.
SB, sorry.
I'm
My
glad
mistake.
that we caught that. So DP 2018-229. Now I would ask the appellant or their agent to identify themselves to the board, please.
This is Cy Johnson and Caroline Johnson. They are the applicants, and I'm representing them. I'm Alistair Russell from Russell & Russell Design Studios.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Russell, and welcome to the hearing. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, thank you. Now, does the appellant have any objection to any of the board members hearing this appeal? Wonder if you could stand up to the mic there.
I've consulted with the applicants. No.
Great, thank you very much. And has the appellant received a copy of the agenda package distributed to the board, and do you have any objections to any of the information provided?
We have received the package and we have no objections.
Great, thank you very much. I'll just outline the hearing process. First, administration will make a presentation, and then yourselves or your agent will speak in favor of the appeal. And then if there are any others that wish to speak in favor of the appeal or any correspondence received, we'll receive that at that time. Then there'll be those speaking in opposition to the appeal and any correspondence in opposition, if any. Lastly, if there's anyone that is neither in favor nor in opposition, then they'll have a chance to speak. At any time, the board may ask for clarification by any of the persons speaking to the appeal. The board may then ask for a short recess if necessary. And then to close, administration will be asked if they wish to provide any clarification or closing remarks, followed by any clarification or closing remarks from the appellant. The board will then close the public portion of the hearing and go in camera and review all the information provided. We will then provide a written decision within 15 days following this hearing. Now, the purpose of this hearing is for the appellant and affected parties to provide the board with information to the appeal. The board must base its decision on planning merits. As outlined a moment ago, affected persons will be given an opportunity to speak, although I'm thinking it might not be much said at that point in the hearing. Please ensure that all comments are directed to the board. Also, we would ask that all comments be of proper decorum and be succinct. And if another person has already made a point, simply state that you agree with that point. Once again, probably not needed today. If any person is referring to a written document, including a map, photographs, or report, a copy of those documents must be left with the clerk. Does the appellant have any concerns with the process as outlined?
No.
Great, thank you very much. Then let's proceed. I would now ask the development officer to make their presentation with respect to this appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the statutory requirements for the appeal, the development officer refused the application on February the 19th. We received a notice of appeal on February the 22nd of this year, sent out notification letters on March the 6th, and set the appeal hearing for today, March 21st, all of which meets the statutory requirements of the Municipal Government Act.
Great, thank you.
Okay. The application is it's located on First Street at 710 First Street. It's a residential single-family detached dwelling in the R1 district. It is an existing dwelling, and the applicant proposes an elevator addition that will project into the side yard. This gives you a representation of the house. On the right-hand side of the photo are the stairs that go up to the side of the house where the main entrance is. And the arrow points to the location of the addition. This is an image of the existing floor plan at the side of the house, showing the main entrance and the stair access. And the oval represents the location of the proposed addition. This is an image of the proposed addition. The elevator will sit on or becomes enclosed and takes over some area of the deck. And the entrance itself is adjusted to allow for elevator access in and off at that location. This is an image of the existing right elevation of the main entrance of the house. And this image shows the location of the elevator addition. The deck was built as part of the original building in 1996. At that time, the bylaw did not provide direction for deck projections into the required side yard. There are 3 existing side yard variances so for clarification, between the house and the minimum, and the property line, there's 2.66 meters. The minimum required is 1.5, so the house itself is well within the property. The distance between the house and the minimum side yard setback is 1.16 meters, so that's the difference between those two. So the elevator shaft itself is an addition that will be 1.5 meters deep, requiring a variance of 0.34 meters, which is a variance of 23%. The deck is 1.86 meters deep, resulting in a 0.7 meter variance, and that is a 47% variance. The eave is allowed to project into a side yard by an additional 0.6 meters, and the amount of projection is 0.57 meters into the 0.9 meter side yard, if that makes sense, resulting in a 63% variance. This is an image from our current land use bylaw showing the building projections, and the element, one of the elements here that you can see is that the balconies and decks are not permitted in the side yard. The Town of Canmore Development Authorities, so the development officer or the Canmore Planning Commission, are unable to approve the building projections as it exceeds our variance allowance in the land use bylaw per section 117.1.1. Further, as noted, the land use bylaw does not allow decks to project into the minimum side yard. There are some considerations with respect to this application. As noted, when the house was originally built, there was no direction with respect to deck projections into the required side yard. The proposed addition is located centrally along the side of the house. The building massing is not significantly altered, and the adjacent undeveloped land to the east is owned by the applicant. The Subdivision Development Appeal Board has a couple of alternatives. One is to uphold the decision of the Development Authority and refuse the development permit. The other is to approve the development permit subject to Schedule A conditions, which the SDAB clerk has a copy of for your consideration. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. I'd look to the board to see if there are any questions at this time. Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Chair Krausert. So from the image that I'm seeing here, the elevator shaft is contained within the envelope of the existing deck. Is that correct?
Pretty much, yeah.
So it's not projecting any further out than
well, the deck itself, I think there's a minor change to the deck. Just as part of, there's a structural element that's required for both the elevator shaft and to enter the main entrance, but it's very similar. The deck itself is extending a little bit further than the elevator shaft, which I think is a better answer to your question.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is within the deck.
It's within the,
yeah.
It's in the,
yeah.
The envelope of the elevator shaft is within the current envelope of the deck.
It's within the deck.
But if you, would you have an alternative, would you have an option to put a staircase in that space if you were going to do it? Like if you could actually fit a circular staircase, or could you actually put a staircase?
You mean internally in the house?
Just on the, along the deck part. So say you wanted to put a staircase in there, would that make any difference if it was enclosed within the space of the deck? So the elevator shaft is a mechanical function, right? But
that's correct.
But it's not protruding any further from the deck. But if you were going to put a staircase in, would that?
If I understand the question correctly, a staircase enclosed in the house would result in the same variance.
Oh, okay.
The enclosure of the house would be the same whether it was an elevator or a very narrow spiral staircase.
Yeah.
Oh,
something
okay.
like that. I think
So
it would
it's
be the same
what's the under consideration here is that you're enclosing this section that was an open deck, but now it's going to be enclosed?
Effectively, it's an addition to the existing house. So what was deck will now become the column of building
the shaft.
Okay.
Added on there.
But it's within the space that the deck's already occupying?
Yes.
More or less, yes. There might be, some finishes and that sort of thing. That might be a better question for Alistair, but we have a plot plan that is done by a surveyor, and that identifies what the actual variances are required to allow this addition.
Because we
So
have
if I might seek, provide some clarity, I think that when we compare Exhibit 5 and Exhibit 6, it looks like in Exhibit 6, the proposed addition of the elevator doesn't stick out any further than the furthest part of the deck sticking out that exists both before and after.
It doesn't, no, that's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay, that's
so
what I'm
there-
trying to
Yeah.
Okay.
visualize, because we have
Yeah, so there's
overhead.
an existing portion of the deck that actually goes beyond the,
Yeah.
most of the deck, and the elevator shaft does not expand past that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was just trying to visualize it from all the different angles.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other
no.
questions?
No,
Okay,
that's
good question. Any other questions? Mr. Scott?
I'm looking at your considerations, and the last bullet is both the elevator addition and any future development of the neighboring property will need to meet the construction requirements of the Alberta Building and Fire Codes. If approved by the DAB, the elevator addition requires a building permit. I guess I'm trying to figure out or understand that particular statement with relationship to the neighboring property.
Okay, currently the neighboring property is vacant. There are separation requirements with regard to fire and safety codes, but in any case, either one of the developments should be able to address those codes. Does that make sense?
So what you're saying is if the adjacent, or at least what I'm understanding, if the adjacent vacant lot is developed, then their setback may need to be more?
It may need to be more, or it may just be that the material finishes are a little bit different, or that there can't be like windows and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's all based on the Alberta Safety Code and fire codes.
Okay, so this one does not have windows?
No, that's right.
And is this new addition is it made of material that would meet those requirements?
We haven't received a building permit application as yet, and it will be reviewed by our safety codes officer, and whether or not the material needs to meet a different standard will be addressed through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation. Now I would ask the appellant to make their presentation with respect to their appeal.
Thank you, and thank you, Audrey, for your presentation. I agree with Audrey and Alaric's description of it, and certainly in terms of that, whether it's a elevator or a set of stairs, it's definitely sticking out and requires a variance to pass. Sorry, guys, I can't. The computer's gone from below here, so it's that little thing. All right, okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm not sure which one it goes in. Shouldn't matter.
Shouldn't, yeah.
It's very hard to tell which one to be round. I've got it.
Yeah.
Awesome, thanks. So, thank you for your presentation. I have to admit, when I looked at the drawings earlier today to prepare for the presentation, I did realize there was some lack of clarity in it, and I wanted to be explain clearly to you guys, without procrastinating, what the various variances are. So, this is the Johnson's elevator, and the first page there is the existing site plan, and I think the one point I wanted to bring to your attention is that the deck is of course existing, and as Audrey pointed out, wasn't illegal until sometime after 1985. This is the proposed site plan, and as you can see, the dark grey area that is not hatched is a legal addition, if you like, a conforming addition, and it really is this hatched dark grey spot here that we are going to discuss today. And as it says, the proposed addition encroaches 0.35 metres into the side yard setback. So I think hopefully this next diagram will be really nice and clear. So this is, I don't know how that happened, that didn't work. So this is the existing entrance to the house. As you can see, there is a set of stairs right at the front here, which goes up to a main level deck that then has another few stairs to get up and into the entrance. And as you can see, the deck is now non-conforming, although apparently it was at the time. And this eave is the existing eave, and I'm not sure if that was ever conforming or whether it was, yeah. So that's the existing conditions, and we're certainly hoping that you don't ask us to nibble off any of our existing conditions. The next page is our proposed addition. So I'm trying to go from one to the other, so it's not, well. So as you can see, the dark walls are the areas that we're adding to the house, and the hatched blue area, if you can see that colour, is the area that's non-conforming. I'd like to sort of take a step aside and say that obviously the point of this entire project is to get an elevator into the building. I regret not having the rest of the building to show you, but this really is the only option for a location for an elevator. The Johnsons did examine all other possibilities in terms of trying to provide an elevator within the bylaws, but this is our sort of only solution. As you can see, we're putting it just beside the stairs here, and it does go down to the garage level. We're having to make some alterations there as well to make it work. So that's really, there is two parts of this application. One is the existing non-conforming structure, and the second part is the proposed non-conforming structure. So those are the locations. This is the existing house, as Audrey showed us earlier. And this is the proposal. The drawing is slightly modified from the one we gave to Audrey because it wasn't entirely correct in the sense that this dotted line was a bit higher, but it really is only the wall, and that's where the wall stops. So that's the area of our proposed current variance. For me, I think, I hope you will find in our favour in relation to some of the other regulations we have in terms of allowable projections into side yards, it's very, very close. So, for example, the little arrow there that says area of addition beyond the setback, which is 100 and something square feet, but it's 15.79 square meters. And if you look at this third elevation, the red area represents a permissible cantilever that's actually 0.25 of a meter further into the setback. So really the area that's non-conforming, if you like, to split it down into little parts, is this area below the red box. And of course, unfortunately, for the addition of elevators, we really do have to go down to the ground level. So as you can see from this diagram, we're not as far into the setback as we could be with a standard cantilever. We're just a little bit over that area allowance. So that 12 square meters is the maximum size for a cantilever. However, you could have 3 or 4 cantilevers on the one side, I think. I feel like I shouldn't say that, yeah? So I think in principle, that's the maximum size of a single cantilever, and this definitely isn't a cantilever. The fire code that was briefly touched on, we're obviously having to sort of make some new efforts in terms of the Alberta Building Code and fire safety to not spread to other buildings. So those are certainly the materials on this elevation, the addition to the building, must be fire rated or fireproof. So we're certainly not going to be, unfortunately, using the cedar that the existing building is clad in. It will have to be a fire-rated material. So that's our presentation, is essentially that what we're asking for is very similar to a cantilever that wouldn't have to appear in front of you, and it's only the fact that it's attached to the ground because it's an elevator that we've been unable to avoid variances. And of course, primary reason for doing this is to achieve an elevator in a home that the Johnsons have lived in for 20 years or 21 years, and obviously just to try and extend the life of that home and not have to sell and move somewhere else. So that's the reason for the proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Now, do you have copies?
Yes, I've got 3 copies here that you guys can...
All right, and that includes all of the drawings that you've shown there. Great, thank you very much. Now I'd open up to the board if there are any questions. Mr. Birch.
Sorry. I have a hard time understanding your roof line. Do you have, well, I can see what you're doing, but I have a hard time understanding how far it's projecting relative to the property line. Does it, I guess ultimately the question is, does that roof line, the eave actually, is it parallel to the property line, or does it stick out more at the pointed end?
No, it is definitely parallel, but of course the entrance itself is at an angle, so the gable roof that's been there since 98 is at 45 degrees to the new wall we're creating. So it does have that awkward descending eave line that isn't perhaps as attractive as we'd like, but it is a function of the fact that the roof that we're below is just going to be extended, and in the area where it's obviously the same height as the rest of as the existing eaves, it's pretty low. However, because that eave line goes back into the building, this is the low point for our addition. You'll be able to see in the this proposed main floor plan that our new eave here, which runs 6 inches out from the building, is actually a conforming eave, and that's not what requires a variance. The only eave that requires a variance is the area that was built in 98. So our eave line is within the bylaw. It's only the actual foundation that creates this requirement for a variance.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Chair Gossard. What is the standard lot size in this neighborhood?
It's 15 meters wide, so that's 50 feet.
50. So there's standard 50-foot lots.
Yeah, we at the start of the project we did discuss the potential of taking both lots and re-subdividing them, if you like, to push that property line over. I did advise the clients that wouldn't be a good idea for the vacant lot, because of course lot width is always the thing that's in short supply. Lot depth isn't, giving an extra couple of meters to the back of the lot doesn't make a great deal of difference, but taking out even half a meter from the side of the lot really has a big impact. And I think that's where we were hoping that this would seem similar to a cantilever that's permissible, a small allowance to create an elevator.
So what I was trying to confirm is that these are standard lots, they're not narrow lots, so we're not encroaching on
Correct.
narrower than standard lot. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Thank you very much, Mr. Russell.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to ask the question if there's anyone here to speak to this appeal other than those who have already introduced themselves. Seeing none, I'm not going to have to ask that repeatedly. I will now ask the clerk if there's any correspondence received, either in favor, opposed, or neutral.
The only correspondence we received was a notice of appeal application from the applicant, and it was in favor.
Great. Thank you. You would think so. Yeah. All right. Okay, so I'm going to ask then, does administration have any closing remarks, comments, or clarification? Seeing none, I'll ask now the appellant, do you have any closing remarks, comments, or clarification?
No thanks.
Great, thank you very much. So does the appellant feel that they have had a fair hearing?
Yes, we do.
Great, thank you very much. Well, this hearing is now concluded. In accordance with provincial legislation, the board is required to hand down its decision within 15 days from today's date. We try to do that quicker than that, so hopefully you won't be waiting too long. No decision is binding until the board issues a written decision. And I'd now like to make an adjournment, make a motion for adjournment of today's hearing. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Jamieson, all those in favor? And carried. Thank you very much. You're welcome to stay for the business meeting, but I can tell you it's not going to be as nice as what call this business meeting of the Subdivision and Appeal Board to order. We're looking to the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda as provided?
No.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated. Do I have a second for that? Mr. Scott, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Now we'll turn to adoption of minutes. We have two sets of minutes to pass here. First of all, the November 14th, 2018 appeal hearing minutes for SB 2018-003. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the appeal hearing SB 2018-003 as circulated. Can I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Ms. Jamieson, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Now we'll turn to the... Yes, Mr. Birch.
Do I stop?
Yeah.
So the question is, this decision, I think, is subject to a court appeal. So what's the status of these minutes? Have these minutes been sent to the court yet? Because you have to put a package together for the Court of Appeal. I'm just curious as to, because this set is presumably going to the
So
court.
I did include it in the package as unapproved, and they were aware of that, and it was marked on the minutes. So once we do approve, I will send them the signed copy to replace.
Thank you.
Great clarification. So now turning to the business meeting minutes from November 14th. Any errors or omissions noted there? Mr. Birch?
Yeah, I have a couple, if I get this right. So this is the business meeting of November 14th, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so it seems that I'm the chair, but it's got Sean Krauser under members present. Have I got the right thing? Yeah. And so probably, Sean, you weren't there, and you
No,
probably...
I was there.
Okay.
I was there for the appeal.
In all honesty, in all honesty, I can't remember, but I'm looking down. So if the members present are correct, then the call to order shouldn't be by Chairman Birch.
Oh, I see what you're referring to. Okay.
So,
yeah.
You're right, I will
and quite honestly, I can't really remember.
No, you're right.
The meetings start to blend
You're right,
a
that's
little
incorrect there.
But, something that needs to be changed, and if, Sean, you were there, then change my name in the call to order to, and it's probably just that line, call to order, change that to Mr. Krauser.
Yep, great. Good catch.
And I think that's all.
Sorry, you would have thought I would have saw that one, but I kind of skipped over the call to order part, I guess. But right, okay. Any other errors or omissions? Okay, then I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the business meeting of November 14th, 2018, as corrected. Can I have a second for that motion? Mr. Birch, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, so now we go to, we had some items here, didn't we? So item 4, just to confirm, we do not have a next scheduled meeting at this point, correct?
We do not, that's correct.
Okay, so we'll go to other business. A, refund of application fee. Now this pertains to the hearing that we just had. Okay. I would look to I'd look for some guidance as to the normal procedures around dealing with that sort of a request. I know that it was in the, they requested it, they didn't give any reasons.
Refund policy. I don't have a copy of it. Ms. Noel does, though. Generally, it's up to the board to decide. I think the important piece is that the outcome of the hearing isn't intended to have an impact on whether or not the refund is given.
Right, it's not costs and the cause sort of thing.
That's right. The fee is intended not as a fee recovery or anything like that. It's intended to avoid any spurious or unnecessary or unfounded appeals, especially by someone trying to delay the process. So that's clearly not the case in this situation or most of our situations. Generally, the board has historically refunded those. In the last couple of years, some of the nature of the appeals the board hasn't felt were carefully considered in advance, I think, weren't carefully considered in advance, and in those cases, refunds were not issued, but it's entirely up to the board's prerogative.
And is it typically, when it's been dealt with in the past, is that through, is there an in-camera time to discuss, cases, and then we would come out of camera and make a motion?
Yes. So I think it would be entirely fair to consider that issue at the conclusion of your in-camera decision, or discussions rather.
Well, we could go in camera right now.
Yeah.
So I'd like to make a motion to go in camera to discuss this matter. Do I have a second for that? Ms. Jamieson, all in favor? Carried. So now we'll go in camera if the cameras could be Okay, we're back in the regular business meeting. And with respect to item 5A on the agenda, I'm going to make a motion that we deny the request for a refund of the application fee. Do I have a second for that motion? Mr. Birch. Are there any discussion with regards to that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Moving to item 5B, discuss time of public hearings. So we have a 2 o'clock time. The options are really 2 o'clock or evening, but usually it's going to be 2 o'clock now because we're trying to aim to coincide with the work hours for administration so that there's not overtime and that sort of thing, right? So now the issue, as I recall it, is because this was set at 2 and then changed afterwards, we thought we better have a discussion about that and determine what our preferred approach is, right? So I think, Mr. Birch, did you have something you wanted to? Well, I think you described it well in the email.
Yeah, I guess to me, it doesn't really personally matter if I'm free that day, I'm free that day at a certain time. So I like to try to be cognizant of the public, and they seem to have, in this case, they had a hard time getting here, I guess, at this time. So I'm relaxed about changing it. If the preference is to say 2 o'clock as a regular, and then have, as our regular schedule, and then have an allowance for them to ask for a different time, I'm okay with that. But I think our job is to deal with the public and accommodate the public more. So I'm flexible, right? and would encourage the board to be flexible.
Any other thoughts, comments?
I think I would agree with Mr. Birch's assessment because it is for the public. It's a public hearing, so the time that's available that is convenient to the public is what I think we should be appealing to. However, if there are changes in time, that does cause some issues if it's between the time that the hearing has been set and the time that the hearing is going to take place. So I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that the hearing time is something that causes a lot of people to have to come together and check their schedules. But what's convenient for the public, I think, is what we should be aiming for.
Yep, Mr. Birch.
Just on that, I thought Jolene, I think it was Jolene's idea back when we were having the emails back and forth on this, the suggestion that, on the appeal form, there's be some notation that the board normally sits at 2. If you have some objection to that and need a different time, then
yeah, and that's correct. And I have added it to the form, and there's on the office use only, there's a check mark 2 p.m. or otherwise. And so I figured we could offer it as 2 p.m. as the first offer, and if that just doesn't work, then we can work with them to create another time.
And I think that deals with the meeting the public's need for if they need a different time. I agree, it's the change that is the issue, because once we get it in our calendars and there's up to 7 of us and making sure that we're available at that time, and then changes come about, well, now we have to go cancel something else or maybe can't make it or whatever, right? So I would really encourage that that's dealt with up front as best as possible, and really, underline for them, you'll be able to do this time, right? It works, good, okay, now I'll set it up, right?
I agree. When I'm thinking about we want to be available and flexible, but we're busy. Everyone's got a lot going on. So if it's set for a certain time, I like the offer to be flexible to a point. But if I think I'm coming here at 2, I'm going to have something going on in the evening. So we kind of have to. Do we think that this is going to be a challenge to offer this in the afternoon? Is that what we're?
I don't know if it's the offering in the afternoon as much. I think the issue was that it was set at 2, and then afterwards it was switched to 4. Okay. And that caused, I know I had to juggle some things.
Yeah, it was a bit hard for one of the administration members as well. I think I like the idea of upfront, when I accept the application or the notice of appeal, that I can have that discussion and say, we prefer the 2 o'clock, or, you know, will that time work for you? And then, like you said, we're not setting a time and then changing it. It gets established before.
At the beginning, okay.
Yeah.
So this is a matter of procedure, and I'm wondering if we should have a motion to just capture what we've stated, or that's what I'm thinking. It'd probably be best if it's captured in the minutes.
Well, I think,
Scott?
I think that Julian is going to capture it in the form that goes out. And I think if we agree that the form, the way she's going to present it, that it's presented as 2 o'clock, if you want something else, please notify us. And then that gives us, as it comes in, as the appeal comes in, we get it at the front end. So we know what the appellant is asking for.
Right.
So I think that probably, as long as we all agree with that being put into the form, then it's okay.
Great. I think just so that we have it in the minutes and it's recorded, I think the motion would be something to the effect that we would request the clerk to ensure that the notice of appeal form clearly state the start time, and that the practice be to ensure that the start time works for the appellant, and to avoid changes to the start time, if at all possible, once a hearing has been set. Okay. Did you get that? Thanks. So do I have a seconder for that motion? Mr. Jameson. And all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, so then there's no other business, so I would move adjournment of this business meeting. Actually, do you need seconds for an adjournment? Typically they don't. So all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, so now we can